Hello YouTube and Happy New Year. This is David with boatnutfilms. It's been a while since I've done a video on the Corvette, but really haven't had to do a lot to it. I've put probably 3,500 miles on it since the last video, and it had a minor rear main seal issue. The more I drive it, the more it seems to seal that up. It's not really leaking from there anymore. There's a couple of things though that we really need to get done. This is my backup vehicle, and my wife's Jeep is mixing its coolant and oil, so looks like we're going to have to do a head gasket on that 4-liter high output inline 6, so that might be the next video. Here in Middle Tennessee, it is getting down cold to 19 sometimes. I've been driving the car just with a little DC heater under my feet. Anything, 35 degrees and above, as long as you don't roll the windows down, that little 150 watt heater will keep me warm. But the car stays inside, so I never have to defrost or anything. So it's going to have to go to work and sit, and there's a couple issues that we're going to have to take care of. First one is the heater core, and the book is pretty vague about how to take this thing apart, so I'm gonna kind of wing it, and there's some other things that I want to do while I tear into it. One thing is to upgrade the stereo. This came out of the Intrepid, and I just put the factory stereo back in it whenever it left, but it's got the USB port for a data stick or whatever, and it's also got another input for Pandora, or it's got Bluetooth actually, and it's got a little microphone that comes with it that is for the telephone, and I'm pretty sure I figured the wires out. I'm going to get the power antenna wire figured out, but I'm sure I can find a diagram for that somewhere. But this is a much better stereo than what's in it, and also these I think will fit in the dash, so I'm going to go ahead and pull the dash pad for this reason, and just to get a better look on what needs to come apart. These are 3-way speakers, and then I'll put some 2-ways in the doors, and the 6x9s maybe is what's in the back of these, I'm not sure, and just do some 1-way, get more bass that way. They sound better out, I think. And also I'm going to put this in there, so I've got a couple of USB ports to charge, but I don't want to really drill into the console or anything, so I might make a bracket for that. And also there was a belt that came with the car. I'll go ahead and replace the belt out, because there's another issue we're going to have to deal with as well, and I'll show you that. The more I've driven this car, the more test it's been, more of a test it's been on what's needing to be replaced, and here we're leaking pretty bad. We're going to have to replace all the power steering hoses. I hope I don't have to pull that pulley. I'm not sure. I think I can pull the alternator and then actually get to the hoses. You can't really see, but you see down there it's leaking, and if I leave it outside overnight, it will pull moisture into the system, and then I have to bleed it just by steering it side to side to get the air out of the system. But usually after you drive it for 4 or 5 minutes, it will get the air out. Power steering rack is good, the pump is good, the O-rings on the hoses are bad, I can tell. Another thing that I've done is I've gone ahead and replaced the tires on it. Went to Discount Tire, and there were, found them online what I wanted, and these are the Cooper Xeon, and they aren't directional tires, but they have to be mounted this way out, and they've got some good rain channels in them, so I thought that was nice for the price. there were a couple of mail-in rebates that was $130 off if you use their credit, but their credit cards are like 26%, so you definitely want to pay them off within the first month if you can, or whatever. But total mounting, balancing, and they did well with the balancing. They balanced the inside and the outside. So there's weights on both sides of the tires. These are wide tires, and they recommended that, and they were real good about that. He waived the $9 per charge disposal fee because he started off with this price real high, and I think with the warranty and everything, he wanted like $730 to mount them on. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm looking at here online. So we just got the basic warranty and the discount, and I think I do know we paid a total of $531 for all 4 tires through Discount Tire, with the rebates. I don't know if they'll send me a check or it will credit it. I don't know. We'll see. But rides so much better. The tires were flat spotted where the car sat for so long, and I researched that a little bit, and the low profile tires, like for performance cars, do it a lot easier than the cars with the taller sidewalls. Another thing I noticed about these tires that you may or may not know, it says the maximum PSI is 51 pounds on these tires, but that's just for the tire mechanic to seat the tire. You would want to put any more than that just to seat the tire. You don't want to run that much air pressure in these tires. I have learned nowhere near that. You know, anywhere from 32 to 35 is what they recommend to run in them, and I've evened these out to 35 pounds, and it rides a little bumpy. I may lower them a little bit, but it also is in need of shocks. But if we do the shocks, I'll have to do the 4-wheel alignment. The tires weren't wearing unevenly, so we'll get into that after we figure this heater core out and we get our hoses on. Will be good for cold weather, and it sitting outside at night will be able to defrost itself. Another problem that I have had that we've talked about in previous videos is the climate control system itself doesn't work. I can get the fan to come on at any time, and it blows out the floor, the vents, and the dash. All that's operated on vacuum, and I know the vacuum diaphragm is bad in that, but sometimes it will come on and actually give me a temperature reading. I'm hoping once I get that out, I can find the short. Maybe it's in a connector, maybe it's just something that needs to be soldered, where I can actually control the temperature with the electric motor for the heater door. And if I can't, I will just have to prop it open and just turn it up and down from there to get through the winter. We're going to have that rebuilt and send it to batty.com, but I have checked and there's no Freon in it anyway, so we'll do that this summer, save a little money, little by little. Another reason I'm thinking I'm going to go ahead and take the whole dash pad out is, I don't know if you can see those, scrape those stickers off, and then I can clean down in there real good and get all the gunk out. And the air duct itself, it says in the book, needs to come all the way out, and if that's the case, I need to clean it as well, because it's blowing that old dry rotted foam out of the vents, and hopefully I can correct that. But what I'm going to do is just pretty much take the dash all the way apart. Leave the instrument cluster in for now. Take all this out down to the console. I've noticed I'm already missing some screws, so I'll have to find out what size they are and get some screws and paint them black. A couple of my bulbs have gone out in this thing, so I'm going to go ahead and try and replace them. It's another reason just to go ahead and take it all the way apart with LED bulbs, and again upgrade the stereo. So I've seen on YouTube they don't really have a good video on changing the heater cores in these, but the guy did have to remove the passenger seat so he could lay in there. We may have to do that, so we'll see. But it's got the top down on it, so I can have my places to lay all my tools and stuff, and I'm not going to rack myself up over it. I'm going to take my time and just try and do it, and I'll try and show you before it's over with the easiest way I found to do one. This is a 1989. Okay, the first thing we did was just disconnect the ground on the battery, the black wire, the negative. Mine is already disconnected, and I've been bypassing it. It says in the book to drain the fluid. This one, the fluid has already been flushed, and I actually have flushed it maybe 3 times to get all the old Dextrol out of it and put green in it and get all the rust out of it. But you could, if you have fresh fluid, just disconnect your heater hoses here and then prop them up where nothing comes out, and maybe squirt some water through here so when you pull it out it won't make antifreeze mess in there. It'll just be water. But the first thing we took out in the passenger side, this is your bottom of the dash, and it just has screws that go in this outer piece, and it slides in actually, so you'll put it in like this and kind of slides in the bottom. To disconnect the light, use the little clear plastic tabs, just push them in. I broke one of them off, but it's brittle, so you got to be careful. The clear tabs push in to get your light disconnected, and this thing is nasty where it leaked on it. I'm going to have to clean it up, but that's how you get that out. It's just a matter of 5 or 6 screws. Of course mine didn't have them all in there. Next thing is we did was remove this side panel here, and there were 2 screws that held this vent on that goes into the door and defrosts the mirrors and the windows. You get under here. On my model I have unplugged it because it's got climate control, but I just push that in, and it's hard to see, but there's these screws even up in there and over here that go to your heater box, and I've actually gotten it loose. But this vent duct, it will come out now, but it keeps connecting up. This has got to pull out of the way, and also you can see that that's your ECM. That's got to come out, and that's the next thing that I will take out. We're going to unplug it, and then 2 bolts, and it should work out. So we've got enough room to get this back out of the way. Also, this cross brace will have to come out, and we'll try and get to that. It says, I don't even see the other end of it, but I haven't had to move the seat out. It's low enough to the ground where I can kind of fit over in here. But on this one, you wouldn't generally, to do the heater core, have to remove the upper dash pad, but I'm going to go ahead and take it out because I want to see what speakers are in there. And the book recommended that you take the instrument cluster and everything out and disconnect the duct over there, I guess, so you have room to pull it out of the way. We'll have to figure that out. And so what I'm going to do now is go ahead and take this ECM out. Then I'll probably just pull this dash pad, and I may be able to see more from there. You have to even pull the console or anything like that, but we'll get into that because I'm also going to replace the stereo while I'm in here with an upgraded model. So that's what we've done so far, and that's actually not been that difficult. Okay, we've got our ECM removed. You see those are the plugs that go in, and you just push down on the blue tabs, and it mounts straight up in there. And so far I've used 7mm sockets on the box itself and a 10mm sockets on the bolts to remove the ECM. That's all I've used, that and a Phillips head screwdriver so far. Here's our ECU. It says that it is a remanufactured original equipment, so that means it's been replaced before. But this is the bottom. This would point directly down at your feet, and just pull these two 10mm bolts, and then at the end of it, it's got these plastic rubber things that don't lock in, but they just push in, so you just have to use a little force to push it out. Be careful when you pull your plugs on your pins, work them out slowly, or you don't want to bend any of your pins, so work your plugs out slowly. I might clean this a little bit up, clean this up a little bit before I put it back in. It doesn't look too bad though. And for that brace bar, I thought I was going to have to remove this, but you just have to peel the carpet back far enough to access that bolt there, and there's another one bolt same size that I can get to. So we're going to pull this stabilizer bar out next. Okay, the next thing that I'm pulling out, this is a to 7mm. This is your motor that controls your door. It's hard to see up in there. Well, you can see it right there. It should just pop right out of that. Should be able to drop this down and out of the way, and then you've got your rod that goes in and controls your door. I'll take this off before I can get to the upper bolt on the brace. Okay, we've gotten the motor out. It's got a little processing board in there. I'm not sure if this is open and closing. This felt like it wasn't connected. I was just going to pop it out right here and leave this, but this didn't feel like it was even connected to the door unless it slides in that easily. But you just got in the bracket two 7mm that you can get to with a small socket and extension. And the brace guided out. See, on the upper part of it, luckily somebody's been here before and it was just finger tight, but you have to put a 1/2 inch wrench on that, and then on the lower part of it I was able to get a 1/2 inch deep well where it goes into the frame there, so we're that far along. Okay, from this point I've been able to get the cover out. This duct that comes across and runs up to the door or the window, it has a 2 screws of flange, one on each side, that connects to the cover itself. So I've gotten the cover completely off where I can access the heater core. And yeah, I haven't had to remove any of the dash or anything like that. And here's your cover, and that's where that vent connected into the box. And there were bolts on top that weren't in there, so I didn't have to access those. So know that you'll have to go and probably feel for those, probably 7mm with an extension to even get that off. But got lucky to get it apart that way because it wasn't put all the way together to begin with. And I can see up here it's got the little rod catcher and operates your door. It's there, but I'll have to connect that and then run it back through without it coming out and connected it in again to the electric door opener. But I want to test that first to make sure it works. So now we're to the point where we can take the heater core bolts out and pull it out and put the new one in, and just go backwards from there. But it's not as hard first off because all the bolts weren't in it, but it's hard to see. This is your main duct. It's kind of breaks in half here, and foam sealer there where it connects into the rest of the system. Getting the wires back and tucked out of the way is very important and the biggest deal. And be careful, some of these are vacuums. That's a vacuum, you don't want to break that, so be real careful about warming around the wires and stuff. This still does not want to come loose unless I go further with it. I think I can get around that where I don't even have to take that any looser. It's just a matter of getting it all back together. Once I get that out, which shouldn't be too bad. And there it is. This is the upper part of it, and there's a strap on the bottom with 2 7mm screws that hold it in place. And then once you get those out, you come around to the firewall side, and I'm dripping, and push it out at the top a little bit, and the whole thing will just pop right out. And you can see, I feel my failures. Take this off. Right there, that tube is my failure. You can't see that. You can see it move here. Oh, just popped all the way off. And that could be soldered back and fixed, but man, this thing is nasty. And they say the best way to keep from having to ever replace these is to keep your cooling system clean and flushed. You know, every couple of years, I usually do my vehicles before winter. I'll flush them completely and let it run for a while. Even do the heater hoses loose and put pressurized water through one, and out comes the other, and let it pour under the car. Take those loose, flush it separately than the rest of the system, and make sure your system is good and cleaned out, and replace your antifreeze and go with a higher quality antifreeze. I recommend. This has got the AutoZone stuff in it, but I will probably flush it again next year, and start going with the better stuff after having to do this. I think probably even the better quality antifreezes will work better. So here's your stack of parts. You know, it's not as hard as a lot of people claim, but it's not easy either. This piece of duct, it fell out during the process, and I'm not sure where that goes. To figure that out. But this is the electric motor. Since I don't have the climate control where the temperature comes on and I can adjust the temperature, I may just leave this off for now and control the temperature with the rod itself, just to make sure I've got heat for the rest of the winter. But I'm not done. I will go ahead and reinstall the new heater core, put it all back together, and then I'll break into the dash, replace the stereo, and see if I can't get that climate control to take off and operate this motor. But before I mount it on there, I'll watch by hand when I move the temperature. If it's moving this thing, I'll put it back together if I can get it to where it will stay on. But you don't need it. The fan motor works even though the display doesn't work, and you can turn the fan up and down. As long as I can get that door open where I've got heat and I can get that fan to work, well, then I can get all the heat and defrost I need, even if I'm down below zero, to drive this thing. And that's the ultimate goal. And these are the tools it took to do the job. Flathead for a little bit of prying, the Phillips screwdriver for a lot of the smaller screws and stuff, a 7mm, 10mm small ratchet, small extension, and then for that brace we had to use 1/2 inch and a 1/2 inch wrench to get to that. The pliers we used to get the plastic thing out of the door motor, right here, this rod, to get it out. But basically that's it. That's what it takes to replace a heater core in a Corvette. And now we're ready to put it back together. I just took some disinfectant wipes and wiped it out real good. See what came out of it, and cleaned the housing in there as much as I could out. A lot of the crap came out on the mat. It's good to take pictures so you remember how everything goes back exactly. Put our foam piece back on, and just we'll set it back in there and get the hoses hooked up and put our strap across the bottom. Right. We got it back in, man, it ain't easy. Just take note, it does not fit all the way flush. Be careful, because you do not want to bend your pipes out here. And I've got the bottom strapped in, and that top clamp was kind of in the way, so I manipulated it. But you can reach your left hand around the door on the back of the heater core while you push the hoses on. That way you don't risk breaking the connectors. So I would actually even lube them up a little bit so it goes on better. But you can actually stand right here and reach both sides of the condenser to push the hoses on so you don't damage anything. And then after that, we'll put our casing on and continue on. Alright, we got our hoses on. One thing, if you put new hoses on, if you're replacing hoses, which you probably should if you're putting a heater core in, the top hose is bigger than regular heater hose. It's like 19 millimeter or something, so I had to actually get it at a different place. AutoZone didn't have it. Auto parts stores generally probably would, but they didn't. And I had to make a coupler there because they don't make the preformed hoses anymore. I went to Chevy to try and get them originally. I'm going to put the cover back on. This is the top, and these screws weren't in there, but this will give you an idea whenever you get yours, if it hasn't been torn into. These are the only two screws that you won't be able to see, and that's on top. The rest of them are visible. Luckily for me, those weren't in there, and it probably still seals just fine without those. I may not put those back in. This hole, this rectangular hole, is where your rod goes in, and it hooks into the door. And then this is the motor that operates the temperature door. My climate control has a loose ground or something, I'm not sure. I'm going to have to dig into that, but for now I just unscrewed this. It screws on, it's semi-adjustable, and I put some tape around it because this end was kind of loose, and I'll have to tie string onto this as I put this on, and then run it through my hole, because I won't be able to see. You could feel probably and stick it in there and get it in there, but it's not going to be easy to do that. I think putting it in first and putting a string on it and just directing it through as I put the cover on is going to be the way to go. And I think even if your motor did work, that's what you would have to do. And this would have to unscrew. It won't fit through that way. And I just put it on there so I don't lose it. Okay, installing the string theory did not work. The rod has to be set as you're putting the cover on because there's not enough room to pull it through. So what I had to end up doing was just pull this back without the screws and jam my hand up in there and set that as I was setting the cover. Now if you had your motor where it actually worked, I would probably put the motor on as the cover goes on and put it all back together at the same time and pop it in on both ends at the same time with my hand in there. With the ECU out or the computer, there's enough room to do that. Once I put it back in, there won't be. So I'm going to have to put this back in order to start the car and diagnose the climate control. But that I'll save for the next video. But the way I'm going to operate now is carefully. If I need to adjust the temperature, I can just carefully take this rod and move it back and forth. I may need to replace the plastic inset that the rod goes into on the door because it is worn, and I think it wasn't in there whenever I pulled this apart. I think it was unhooked from the door. And to adjust the linkage on it and make sure it's right, what I'll have to do once I get the climate control working is set it temperature all the way up and then push the door all the way closed and then make my adjustment there so that I know that it's right. It's probably not off. I could probably set it like it was. I think it is. Looks like it will fit with the adjustment when I remount it where it is, because the last time it came on I set it the climate control as high as it would go, and that's where it's set now. I think with the door closed, I think it is set right. I could put it back. I counted the threads, 4 threads in when I took it apart. But what I'm going to do now is just put the screws back in it. I'm not going to put this cover back in, this that covers all this right now. until I diagnose the rest of it. I'm just gonna get in here and vacuum this out and get some stain remover and clean the carpet a little bit, and I'll get to that. I pushed the plugs in on the back of the climate control, and maybe that will help, but I think it's probably internal. I think I'm going to have to take it apart and look at it, but we'll see. But for now, I'm just going to plug the motor in and kind of let it sit here, and when it comes on, I'm going to see if the motor's actually working with it. So once I get those screws back in, I will put the support bar back in, and I'll put the ECU back in. Well, here it's an ECC, engine control computer, but engine control module. I had to pull the top hose back off, and I didn't think about this before I did it, but I got a piece of the longer hose here and just held it up here and put a funnel in it, and then ran straight antifreeze and filled the heater core, and just kept putting it in until it came back out where I had taken it off on this one. So it made the complete path. It went in this hole, through the throttle body, down, and then back out here. So hopefully I won't have an air bubble. These cars, whenever you do get into the system like that, you can see right here the filler cap is lower than the intake. So you're always going to have an air bubble, and you're always going to have to get that air bubble out and think about that as you're working. What I've done in the past is just start the car and run the car, let it warm up. It'll give me a low coolant light, and I'll come into the reservoir there and fill it up, run it hotter, run it till running temperature again a couple times, and then it will work its bubble out itself. It's done that in the past, so hopefully I won't have any issues with that. So what I'm going to do is put these two components back in, and then I want to plug the battery back in, start the car, back it out, and hose off in here where I've got antifreeze that overflowed when I was trying to burp the system. And then we'll see if we've got heat. We should. We got no leaks on the inside. These things are real fragile. They're just soldered in there, so you want to be real careful. These hoses, if you take them off and on, you risk the chance of tearing your new heater core up. So again, be real careful with it. Can't stress that enough, because that's what happened originally with this one. When I took the hose off, it just broke the whole thing off, but it was so corroded, and it's been replaced before, years ago. I've got the records on it. Then another thing I did, I made sure that I took disinfectant wipes and took the time and just cleaned the inside of the system out. You can get your hand all the way up in here where the AC core is from the inside once you get that door open. So I just took the time to make sure it's real clean, so it's not blowing out dirty crap that was already in it. But we'll get this thing, the last few components back in it, and get it started and back it out and run it and see if we've got heat. Alright, we've gotten it back together, and pushing the plugs in didn't help on that. The fan controls work fine, but I'm getting hot defrost, and I'm getting it hot in the floor, and it's coming out good. So I don't see any leaks anywhere. So getting the heater core in and just getting the heat where it will warm this sucker up and defrost it, where I can use it as a daily driver or drive it back and forth to work, as of now is a success. And next, and we'll save this for the next video, I'm going to pull out the climate control and see if I can get it to, you can't see that, but the lights are blinking back and forth there. It's like a ground issue or something, maybe inside. Take it apart, inspect it, and try and clean it and see if I can get it to ground to the case. But now I'm going to try and bleed the system out a little better and get any bubbles or anything out of it. But even at 158 degrees where we're at now, I'm getting good hot heat, so I'm happy about that. At least I can use it if it gets cold. So thanks for watching. Tune in to be continued.